This week on episode 167 of the Cinema Psycho Show, our own Johnny Hollywood, John Woolscroft, interviews Pittsburgh monster makers, FX artists, and prop fabricators behind well-known Hollywood productions such as Mindhunter, The Dark Knight Rises, and the upcoming feature Sist, Steve Tolan and his crew from Tolan Effects. Hit it.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Collington-Yacht, joined by my fellow co-host, John Lane Woolscroft. It's just me, at least, doing the intro part of this. We're actually going to jump to a fantastic interview that our own Johnny Hollywood has lined up for us. We are on episode 167. This week, as I just mentioned, we are interviewing Steve Tolan, Antonio Grisano, and Kyle Roberts of Pittsburgh's very own monster maker factory, if you will, Tolan Effects, located here in Beechview. I actually was extremely jealous of the fact that John got to go and talk to these guys. One, because I literally live down the street from Tolan Effects, like no joke, the same place that I go to get tacos at Las Palmas in Beechview. Quite literally a block away is Tolan Effects. I see their windows all the time, and I'm just like, man, I wonder what the hell is going on in there, because it looks so cool. The effects that they create in these feature films and TV shows that come out look great. John actually got to work with them on the production Sist that he was working on a couple months ago. And that's kind of how we kind of got the opportunity to talk to them. These guys are fantastic. And honestly, I think that's saying it lightly. Their work is bar none, top notch in Pittsburgh. They have ties with a lot of the Romero stuff that happens in Pittsburgh. So the George Romero stuff. Honestly, you know, the work these guys do is, in my opinion, not appreciated enough, especially in the age of CGI, where everything is, well, why do we have to do a practical effect? Why do we have to work with, you know, latex and foam rubber and everything like that, when we can just use a computer and we can build it? In my opinion, you lose a little bit of the artistry. You lose a little bit of that problem solving that really practical effects can bring. So before I jump to that, I just want to say thank you to Tolan Effects, specifically to Steve Tolan, Antonio Grisano, and Kyle Roberts for taking the time to talk to John. Without further ado, I'm going to jump it over to John, but here is our own Johnny Hollywood with the fantastic effects artists and monster makers of Tolan Effects. So take it away.
Do you like the solar system?
Yeah, it's quite cool, planets and stuff.
All right, I have the luxury here of, well, I'd say not the luxury of flying solo, but I have the luxury of being at Tolan FX, and I've had the opportunity to look around the room, and there is so much to see in here. There is amazing sculptures, posters, puppets. This is an amazing place to be. I think I would have been happy if I had just come in and gotten to look around for 10 minutes, but I had the luxury of being able to talk with a couple of folks here that run the show, including the founder, owner. So if you can tell us about yourself and kind of tell us about Tolan FX and how did this, what do you guys do here?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Steve Tolan. I'm the owner, operator, and founder of Tolan Effects, and we are basically making monsters. And we are a special effects makeup shop. We create physical effects, puppets, makeup, custom props, custom costumes. In many ways, we're really creating custom artworks for the entertainment industry in pretty much any way that could manifest. But our heart is really in making monsters.
Now, you've been going strong for 20 years. How did this all get started, and how do you maintain consistent success for, 2 decades?
Okay, so I'm originally from West Virginia, and I moved to Pittsburgh because it's the capital of West Virginia. and went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. And it was going to be a stepping stone on the way to New York or LA or some larger market. And while I work in those markets, I'm definitely, in the time that I have been in this industry and the time that I've gotten to know myself, I am not trying to live in New York or LA. So I have made a home base here in Pittsburgh. I've got a pile of kids, and I'm really dug in with the film community here and with the artistic community. And what's really cool about Pittsburgh is that we're able to serve a global and national marketplace right here from what otherwise feels like a fairly small blue-collar town kind of a approach.
Now, you guys, by the way, great website. I noticed that there were a lot of different things that you guys did, more than I even actually thought. Can you explain kind of the services that you guys offer? Because I think it's more than most people would think.
Yeah, so, really what we're trying to do is, our mission statement is to help make other people's creative endeavors more awesome. So typically that's within the entertainment industry. More specifically, most of the time it's within movies and episodic television. And so you will have typically a UPM or a line producer who reaches a point in their script where they just don't know how they're going to meet that challenge, whether it is a monster that needs to be able to appear and rip everybody's arms off, or whether it is to create a building that doesn't exist anymore, or whether it is to create something that physiologically just couldn't happen, and we need to create the illusion that somebody's entire insides get sucked out through a hose.
I would throw this out to anybody in the room here, including you, Kyle. Where does one learn these skills? Where do you kind of go to school for this? Is it self-taught? Is it kind of skills you had since being a small child? Where does one learn this? And if you would happily introduce yourself.
I'm Antonio Grisano. I am a contract artist here at Tolan Effects. Began as an apprentice of Steve. Honestly, I feel like if you have any just kind of interest in art at all, you can do what we do. It just takes the willingness to learn it. As a kid, I drew, then I went to painting, eventually went to sculpture and digital forms, and now I'm doing a combination of all those things, really, just to create really cool things. So.
And we're really, we're really creative problem solvers. So there's not one set of skills that you're trying to learn to become an artist in this field. Really, any knowledge that you can gain a mastery of is going to be beneficial to you, whether it's microcontroller Arduinos or even building websites. That website that you like, I built myself. And it's just one of many skills that I've developed over the years by taking an interest in something, believing that you can actually learn it, and then taking the time to really learn it and not being frustrated by the fact that you will always suck at it at the beginning and that it takes practice to get anywhere near good at it. And I don't know who came up with the concept of the 10,000 hour mastery, but you can't spend 10,000 hours and become a master special effects artist. You can spend 10,000 hours and become a master sculptor. You can spend 10,000 hours and become a master mold maker and makeup artist. And, but to be a special effects artist is to be a jack of all trades, and really for me, as a creative problem solver, to delve into as many of those as you possibly can, because believe it or not, lipstick does affect how you glue a monster makeup on.
Now, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, this is just an amazing place to walk into. I don't care if you're a film buff or not. There's a lot of really awesome things around. Can you guys kind of break down, I don't know if the studio is the best term, or business friendly. Can you guys kind of break down all of the different areas that you guys work in here?
Sure. Obviously there's my office hidden by a pocket door, so it's either part of the space or not part of the space. That's pretty much where I'm trying to take your money. Yeah. And then out here, the room that we're sitting in currently is our showroom. So this is a room that we've designed to be sort of a living portfolio. As we work on projects and we have old beat up used pieces from the show, we drag them in here and we try to breathe a little life back into them without taking the life out of them that we just put into them by beating them up. So most of the stuff in here has fingers that are ripped off or teeth that got pulled out on set, or but each one of them speaks to a project that we really did, that hundreds, if not thousands of hours went into each one of these little pieces that to us represent a whole experience. And not, it's like, in my mind, there's the art and there's the artwork. So we're getting paid to create artwork for people. The process of making it is the art. That is the time that we all spend together as a group. That's us on set having fun. That's us, deciding what the sculpture is going to look like. And that's really what I'm trying to show people in this room is not necessarily, I mean, you do see finished pieces of artwork, but really what we're trying to show people is the art through the artwork, to really give a sense of who we are by looking at the stuff that we've made, because all of it really holds a little bit of the energy. But this is also where we do like classes and stuff like that. We teach people how to make masks and that kind of thing. Then there's a room here behind you that is our makeup room, and that's where we life cast people and do their makeup. And also where our local barber, Mike Aponte, runs a barbershop. And then that space up above my office and the makeup room is a space we call the loft. That is where we do soft good work, including like all the stitching and puppet work. And also where we do microcontroller and like servo animatronic type work, and where we also have like 3D printers. Pretty much anything we're not trying to get a bunch of dust on is up top. The room next to us through that opening is a dual purpose room. The space that Andy is sitting in there is Andy Sands is my production manager. He's in there making sure things are running smooth while we're in here screwing off talking about our work. That little space in there is where we create all of the squib rigs for an invention that I came up with about 10 years ago called SquibFX. So SquibFX is a safe, non-explosive alternative to explosive squibs. So it creates the illusion of a gunshot impact on camera, on an actor, or on the set, just using pressurized air and stage blood so that everything is safe and it's really affordable, because now you're not dealing with licenses and permits and expensive pyrotechnicians. You can give the rig to your props guy. You can give the rig to the makeup lady. You could, in theory, you as the writer, director, star of your own movie can easily learn how to use one of these squibs. And now you've got cool in-camera bullet hits in your movie, and you can reuse the rigs thousands of times. So every one that we build, and we sell them all over the world. I can't think of a country off the top of my head that I think that we haven't, at least a continent that we haven't sold to, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Right out of Pittsburgh, you wouldn't expect that little 4x8 table right there is responsible for building every one of those rigs. Yeah. And then also in that same shared space is our replication space, and that includes molding and casting. So anytime a lot of what we're trying to do is, we're creating illusions here. That's really what we're doing. We're creating a fake monster. We're creating a fake gunshot wound. We're creating a fake decapitation. Everything is an illusion. So at the center of creating illusions typically is being able to replicate something. So if you need to be able to hit somebody in the head with a brick, you need to be able to take a brick and replicate it so that you have a soft version of what looked like it's real. So that's really what that room is all about. There is all of the different ways and materials in which we can capture either a negative impression or some sort of impression of an object so that we can replicate it, including the finished work and all that kind of stuff. And then there's another space, which I don't know if you've been into yet since you've gotten here. There's a fabrication space in the back. And that's where we do all of the raw artwork in terms of like woodworking, metalworking. There's a spray booth back there. We've got a CNC machine so that we're not all just sticks and dirt and clay sculptures, but we're also using sophisticated 3D printers and CNC machines to bring a level of precision to the work we do. Like one of the projects we're working on currently is a mock MRI for CMU's brain imaging department. So it's not all just nerd monster movies. We're also actually doing real work to help scientists do their research, which is really neat for us.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just for something you said a little bit ago, for people that aren't as familiar with how films work, can you talk about doing a face mold and face casting, what goes into that? Because I think that for people that don't know, that's kind of an intense thing when you have to have a mold of your face made.
Yeah, life casting is actually one of my favorite art forms. It's one of the art forms I think that I probably have the most practice in, maybe even more than sculpting and painting or any of that. And life casting is really the process of being able to take some version of a mold off of the human body and create, again, a replication of it. So a lot of times where you would want to do that is if you were going to create a severed head of an actor that looked exactly like them, or if you were going to create a prosthetic makeup that had to fit exactly onto an actor's face, you need to be able to sculpt that makeup onto a version of their face. Or just for posterity, I just life cast my pregnant girlfriend so that we have that for our future. The idea that you can capture the human body is something that artists have been doing since Caesar had a death cast done. Typically, they would use a number 1 plaster, and you would be dead already. But nowadays, they have much more sophisticated materials. Like we're using a life casting silicone from Smooth On a lot of times called Silk. What's really cool about that is that because it's silicone, it's very durable, but they also use what's called a hyperfolic release agent in it, which allows it to not stick to your hair at all, which means you could smear it right into your beard, and it would capture your skin under it and then slide right off of the hair, which is a new addition to the life casting family. So the nerve-wracking life cast that you're talking about is one that people think about a lot, which is oftentimes the most typical life cast, which is at least of the face, if not of the full head. And so in that case, what we're doing is typically we'll put a bald cap on somebody so that we don't get it in the head hair, and so that we have a smoother version of what their skull is going to look like under their hair. And then we cover their face in a rubber compound, a silicone, leaving breathing holes for their nose or their mouth, depending on how claustrophobic they are. If they're super claustrophobic, we'll only do their face and we'll sculpt the whole rest of their head based from photographs. And you put rubber on it, then you put plaster bandage on it to make sure the rubber's not flopping around. And the whole process typically for a full head will take about an hour. For a face, it'll take about 30 minutes. And what you end up with is a rubber negative representation of an actor's head or their hands or some part of their body that now you can duplicate in any kind of material, silicone or plaster, or the list goes on and on.
Gotcha. And what kind of what films have we seen, film, television, etc. Have we seen your guys' works in?
Oh, geez. You really have
obviously, I know there's a lot, right?
You have to look at IMDb and our website. The list is pretty extensive. Some of my featured credits would be Cyst the movie.
Did you mention Cyst? we're not plugging that in any way, are we? Yeah.
It Came From Yesterday was a film that I produced in 2008. That was the largest creative involvement that I've ever had in a motion picture. It was a feature film that we produced from the ground up. I was a creative producer, creating all of the monsters and all of the practical moments, but also we created all CG sets. For every set was a composite, much in the way of like 300 or Sin City. And that's definitely one of my stars in my crown. And of course, typically when it's a giant movie, we're a smaller cog in that machine, but we've done definitely some big stuff. Batman and Jack Reacher, and we have an episode of Walking Dead under our belt. We did both seasons of Outsiders. We can look around the room here. Witch Hunter, Bigfoot the movie. We worked on Fences. That was a life casting job.
I was curious what Fences was all about. But
so I don't know if it made the final cut of the movie, but there was a young boy in that movie who was supposed to get beat up real bad, and Carl Fullerton, one of the best makeup artists alive currently, is also Denzel Washington's personal makeup artist. Any show that he does, he's bringing him with him. So we were able to have him in our shop, and we built a life cast for him to create the makeup on for the film, which I don't even think made the final cut. But I'm a big August Wilson fan. Pittsburgh obviously has deep August Wilson roots. This is where he's from. This is what he was writing about. Denzel now has a strong interest in doing the whole history cycle here. We've done a bunch of plays with Mark Clayton Suthers, who we do a lot of theater. And Mark Clayton Suthers runs Pittsburgh Playwrights here in Pittsburgh, but he was one of August Wilson's proteges. And so we've done a bunch of August shows with him. So it was really cool. Even though it was just a life cast, it was really cool to not only meet Fullerton, but also to get to have a little piece of August Wilson history. It was really nice. And you guys can't see it, but also in this room right in front of us is a beautiful sculpture that Kyle Roberts has done of August Wilson for no other purpose other than to sort of honor him as an artist. I think that Pittsburgh has lots of sculptures of athletes and politicians and almost no artists. Yeah. So we're kind of taking it upon ourselves to try to create that artwork and sort of populate it out into the city a little bit.
And speaking of, Pittsburgh legends and everything, you guys have had a lot of connections. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, George Romero. Could you guys speak to things that you worked on for Romero and then in honor of Romero? Antonio.
Kyle's up.
All right, Kyle is up.
Hi, my name's Kyle Roberts. I am the resident sculptor at Tolan Effects. And for George Romero, we did a Romero Lives Fest party for Halloween 2 years ago. And we, in honor of George Romero, we did like an oversized bust of George Romero to display, hopefully, outside our shop at some point.
Yeah, that's the long-term plan, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we made it out of fiberglass, made it look bronze. We did a faux bronze paint job on it. And we're also trying to see if we can kick up a horror museum. Sue Romero has mentioned several times that she wants to start a horror museum. That's George's widowed wife. And she's super cool and she's ambitious, and I think that she's going to do it. And we're in the early development stage of trying to pitch her with some designs and see if we can't help make a horror museum happen. Not just specifically in George's name, but as part of his legacy. And the whole Romero Lives thing is really cool. The whole city does stuff every October. Everything from Pitt's Film Department to, there's a zombie museum out in Evans City that does a cool thing. And then we throw this big Halloween party in honor of George. And that sculpture that Kyle did is super cool. And I only met George once. He and I were both given an award on the same night. And that was an Ellie Award in 2018. And then, was that 17 or 18? I think it was 17. 17. Yeah, that was the year that we did the Pinhead. Yeah, we did the Pinhead project that year, which was with Tom Savini, another George Romero connection. Mm-hmm. And Tom gave me my award that night. So it was like, and Greg Nicotero was there giving Tom an award. It was crazy. Yeah. So it was, giving George his award. Yeah, Greg was giving George his award. So it was a real George Romero kind of night. And then he passed, a few months after that. But that was, what a cool way to get to meet George Romero.
Yeah. Absolutely. And now, if I was to come to you guys and say, hey, I have a film, I have this idea, how, and Antonio, I'll ask you, how much do I need to bring to the table? Does anybody come in saying, well, I'll leave it up to you guys, or do you guys expect there to be detailed drawings and ideas and concepts, or how much is it on the, say, if it is a filmmaker, that they have their idea laid out before they come to you, or how much do they lean on you guys to kind of create it from the ground up?
Well, usually they do come here, talk to Steve, and they'll either have, really fleshed out ideas, or sometimes they leave it to us to kind of have our concept artist draw up some really cool monsters, which we did for Cyst. But sometimes they do have their ideas that they bring to us, and they want to see how we can do it. And it's probably safe to say that we exceed expectations, or at least meet them every time. So,
yeah, it really depends on, I think, what the attitude of the filmmaker is coming in. Some filmmakers have a very specific vision of what they want, and they know exactly what they want. And if they come in like that, then we'll give them what they want. If they come in and they have an impression of what they're trying to create, and what they need is our artistic sensibility to help manifest the thing to create that impression, then we can help with that. And so basically we can do everything from concept design work all the way through the finished fabrication, and stepping in at any step in the process, so that if you already have concept artwork, then we'll just make your monster. If you already have your monster made, we'll puppeteer it on set. If you don't have any clue what your monster looks like, we'll draw it, we'll make it, we'll build it, and we'll bring it on set.
Gotcha. And what are some of the, now looking around the room, there's in the coolest way possible, there's lots of crazy stuff here, but what is some of the crazier stuff that you guys have had to design over the years?
One of the monsters I feel like you keep looking at is a monster called the Enuadi, which is from a movie called Beasts of the Water. And that is, unless someone can contest this, I'm pretty sure that is the largest full-body creature suit ever made by anybody that is not on stilts. So like the Alien Queen and Pumpkinhead, those dudes were all on stilts.
Right.
So they don't count. Aside from them, Daniel Gilchrist, who played that character, claims 7'7", and we built another 1.5 feet on top of him. So we're somewhere around a 9 foot tall creature with our actor standing on his own 2 feet. And that is a really neat costume, not only in the sense that it was a full-body creature suit, which is always super fun to make, but it also needed to be animatronic. So there are animatronics in the head and on the back in these quills. It also is like a water god. So whenever it gets shot, it needs to be able to, it has to be able to get riddled with bullet holes, which were all Squibb Effects rigs, that give the impression that he's being shot, but only with water coming out. So that it's as though the bullets are going through the water. And then they had done some visual effects to help create sort of an ethereal quality to him as well. But it's really special to me because it helped me mark off one of my bucket list items, which was to be a monster in scuba gear. So there was a scene, which didn't make the movie. I think they were going to use it in the title sequence, but it was the Enuadi underwater. So we had done this whole pool shoot where, I've got the Enuadi on and I've got a scuba tank attached to me. I thought for sure I was going to die a couple of times. And it also was one of Kyle's early bucket list items too, because he also got to play the Enuadi in the scene where Evans gets dehydrated, right? Is that...
No, I did.
No, when Daniel faces himself. That's right.
Daniel's cameo.
That's right. So Daniel gets to also play a pioneer in the movie where he faces off with the monster that he plays when he's inside the monster suit. So Kyle had to play the monster for that scene. So that's obviously one of our favorites. Right at the foot of him is a fat suit that we did for CMU's production of The Full Monty, where they had an actor who was fit and trim doing a song and dance number where he needed to have all kinds of body issues. So they needed to have a realistic suit. That was Patrick Wilson directed that because he's a CMU alumni. Okay. So he had come back and he was in a production, I think the Broadway production of The Full Monty. And so had brought it back to Pittsburgh and was directing it. And right above them is a sculpture of Dimetrodon, which is one of the most famous dinosaurs, the one with the big fin on his back. Yeah. And we created that for a museum called the Ark Encounter, where in Petersburg, Kentucky, they've built a life-size version of Noah's Ark. And on this version of Noah's Ark, there are Dimetrodon.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole shelf of crazy masks from all kinds of different shows, including a puppet from Motivational Growth, a Jeffrey Combs film, a bunch of masks that I did as audition pieces to get on the television show Face Off. That's probably the best ever head that we've made to date, which is of Sheriff Weineke from Outsiders. That head is special to us too, in the sense that we rolled that. It was designed to spray blood out of it as it rolled down the hill because he gets his head chopped off by a bear trap.
Yeah.
So not only was there this cool moment where the trap closes and blood sprays everywhere and whatever, and we got to hose the DP down with blood, or the cameraman Brian, I think it was his name. He wore his nice pants that day, and. But the funnest part of it was Kyle at the bottom of the hill and me at the top of the hill with this slimy ass, by the time you've done it 20 times, it's covered in dirt and blood, and it was so gross. And just, I don't know, how long did we spend doing that? Probably 30 to 40 minutes just rolling this head down the hill. Yeah, in Monroeville, it was so much fun. It just, blood spraying everywhere and bouncing down the hill. Yeah, it would bounce off trees sometimes. Yeah. Kyle would try to catch it, but it's so slippery, and it would go right by him and then hit another crew member. It was fun.
There was one where it rolled past, slipped through my fingers and hit an apple box at the bottom of the hill and just launched blood.
Yes, it sprayed like 20 feet up. It was so funny. And then we've got a severed head of a dinosaur called Anzu Wiley-Eye. That was discovered by that dinosaur is a real dinosaur. That one not on the wall is not a real dinosaur. Discovered by a Pittsburgh paleontologist at the Carnegie Natural History Museum. And so we created a walk-around dinosaur suit, which you can see photographed underneath of it, that they take to high schools and stuff and to public events to teach kids about evolution as it pertains to dinosaurs. So they're showing a feathered. Anzu Wiley-Eye is one of the first authentically feathered dinosaurs. They could say this is sort of one of the links between dinosaurs and birds.
Yeah.
And then right next to that is a puppet called Kazik, which is from a play called Sea Under Love. He's really neat in the sense that for me, he was the first piece that I ever did that really brought me into theater. Because I come from a movie and TV background. So, I had never really done any theater, and that was the first theater show that I had done. And then right next to it is a puppeteerable animatronic moose from Evil Dead the Musical that my buddy Andy Hosmer built for me in 2015. 14. It was a long time ago. It was really neat. Its eyes glow up white, and his mouth has some cool motion to it, but it has a really cool parallelogram kind of neck mechanism. He had Andy designed it, and I think built some of it, and had Devin Seaman, his protege at the time, build that. And Devin worked here for a long time. And then right next to it is the Bugman from It Came From Yesterday, and a flying bug from the same movie, which was the first full body suit that I ever made. In between his legs is a Wolf Boy from a movie called Wolf Boy. Right next to that is Adrian Barbeau's head from Unearth, a film that we filmed in Erie. And then on the wall behind them is a wall full of face life casts from either people who I've loved over the years or who are like famous or were involved in some project that we worked on. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Does anything surprise you guys anymore? Is there anything like any shock, or is it just like at this point, nobody can really surprise you guys?
I would say the events of my personal life are probably a lot more surprising than the events in my professional life. I can't imagine, like, basically if anybody asked us to build anything, I would take the job. If they had enough money and they had the right timeline, I'll build you a nuclear power plant. I'll just go hire a bunch of nuclear engineers, you know what I mean? And a bunch of designers, and that's the same for any part of your project. There are some films that we talk to who need someone to be able to walk out on a sheet of ice above the river and fall through the sheet of ice. And now you're talking about shooting part of it in a tank, shooting part of it in a real river, compositing, visual effects. We just did a TV show or a Netflix series called I'm Not Okay With This that features a really explosive moment at the end of it that, once again, is like, when you look at the pieces, when you look at the script, it looks like a scary moment. But once you break it all down, it's like eating an elephant. You just break it down into its small pieces, and you bite it one piece at a time. And if you have a group of people who are really interested in collaborating and not just trying to see whose dick's bigger, then you'll always come up with a solution to. I mean, we're just making movies. It's not like we're not trying to cure cancer.
Yeah.
We can't do that, unfortunately.
And how many of your clients are film? How much is theater? How much is business? Because obviously you guys do more than just film. What is kind of the breakdown, and like how many? What are there some things that might surprise people that you guys do work for?
Okay, I would say I'll answer the first part of that first. So I would say if I were to make a pie chart, I would say, Kyle, help me with this, because if I'm off, correct me. I would say that we probably do, 50% of our work is for film. Probably another, let's make that 60% and call it film and TV. Okay. Because episodic TV and stuff and film is it's such a blurry line anymore. Netflix and Amazon have really blurred that line for people.
Right.
So 60% or so is film and TV. I would say probably another 20% is theater. And then that final 20% would be divided between museums and exhibits and private commission collectors. And that's somebody who just calls us and say, hey, they're doing some photo shoot. They need a giant tentacle to wrap around somebody's neck for the shoot. Or they say, hey, we're a corporation and we need to be able to, British Airlines has hired us to create an experience in the middle of Market Square downtown where we have this British comedian and we want to be able to make the phone ring and have people answer it and have this comedian talking to them and be able to photograph the whole thing with GoPros and feed it into a live feed that we can also film. So, it can be a technical achievement sometimes, or it could just be, we're doing a job right now for a high school that has more money than they know what to do with, where they need like a TED Talk set of letters, where it's just like 4-foot tall glowing red letters. It's seems like you would just be able to order that shit on the internet, but the truth is like you can't, because you want to be able to pick out your own font. You want it to be exactly a certain way. So when it comes to custom stuff, that is where that last 20% really gets filled in.
The pinhead hand drawings and stuff too.
And we also do small run manufacturing. So some people will come to us with an invention that they have, and they'll say, "Hey, I need 100 of these. I'm going to use so many for my Kickstarter rewards, whatever like that." And we can, through our replication process, be able to mold and cast or 3D print or whatever to help mass produce stuff. One of the really cool things that we're helping to mass produce is after we were asked to do Doug Bradley's Pinhead makeup this most recent time for him. He also decided that he wanted to go into business selling his own memorabilia, his own Pinhead memorabilia. So he has a couple of statues that he had. One, Kyle did as a fan piece, which is a bust of Pinhead, which is really cool. And Doug Bradley signed off on it and literally signs off on them when he sells them on his website. So they're like signed by Doug Bradley, sculpted by Kyle. But he also creates these Pinhead hands that are from a moment from the third film that he sells on his website. So, and those we're doing limited runs, but we also, that Ark Encounter job that we did, we made thousands of oil lamps for that job. So it's not just the Dimetrodon and 2 custom really cool dinosaurs, but it's also hundreds or thousands of different water pitchers and grain containers and oil lamps on the ceiling and. And that's all using a more traditional manufacturing process like rotocasting and
we did stuff like that.
Vacuum forming
too.
Yeah.
Like the interior of the airplane.
Oh yeah.
Drop down bins and like the signs on the walls and all that stuff for Mindhunter. Same type of thing.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily expect. So this is a good example of where we are just trying to help augment the creative process. So the art department on Mindhunter calls us and says, we've scavenged the airplane graveyard. But we can't get the overhead bins from a 747 from the 70s. So we need to have that manufactured. So they give us blueprints. Mm-hmm. They figured out what their mechanical drawings are. They're giving us AutoCAD drawings. And now all we're doing is creating the overhead bins inside of one plane set on a TV show. So it might show up in a couple of episodes or whatever. But that went on for months. That job went on for months. And then all the tray tables that come down in the same plane. But also in that same television show, all of the miniature models that are of the hotel signs that are establishing shots of each of those hotels, those were all, 4 foot and 5 foot tall miniatures that we made. But then also for that same show, we're making severed feet, as evidence photographs within the show, or a dead bird, or, it's always the point at which somebody says, "Oh, that's great. That's going to be so good. Who is going to make that?" That's when we get somebody's call,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Outriders was like that too. We made props, we did special gags and makeups.
Yeah, not only did we coordinate our own department, which was the makeup effects department, but yeah, Kyle's right. We worked for every other department. We made special costumes, we made special props, we helped with create set pieces for them.
Very cool. Now, you guys have done, stepped into somewhat of the world of digital, but how has your guys' work changed with so many people? I'm biased here a little bit, but kind of going the easy route of taking the digital way out, which, sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that question is about 10 years too late, because we landed at exactly the right time. So when I first got into makeup effects, when I was going to school, they told me that it was one of the worst careers that you could possibly get into, because Jurassic Park had just come out, all these huge CG movies had just come out, and the practical makeup effects artists, you ask Steve Johnson or Rob Bottin or any of those guys, that's when they all got out. They were done. They were like, the computers are going to ruin everything. And they were right for about a half a second. So anybody who didn't heed that advice, who got into the business then, was doing the preliminary groundwork training for whenever the tide shifted, which it has shifted now. And so what everybody wants is, pretty much all of the millennial filmmakers all want a Nintendo. You know what I'm saying? They all want a Nintendo, and they all want to wear fitted hats, and they all want to pretend that it's 1981.
Yeah.
Which is perfect for us, because we are positioned right now where there are not a lot of practical makeup effects shops, because everyone listened to the naysayers and they said, or they just, this has not been easy. Trust me, this has not been anywhere near easy to be able to, year after year, eke a living out of creating makeup effects out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I mean, that's not an easy nut to crack, especially with, a family and little ones to feed and whatever like that. Like, that's a really scary prospect for most people, and they'll just give up. They would rather be a barista, or they would rather go work for Google, or a lot of times what happens is they'd rather be like, go work in the dental field, where it's like it's almost the same kind of skill sets, but it's steady and there's benefits and there's, and it's like a real job, where that doesn't really exist so much here.
I gotcha. And my phone went to sleep. Let me check my questions here. And how do you guys feel about digital effects? You hear first, and then I'll go to Antonio. Like, is it a necessary evil? Is it too much? Is it important to find, like, for a film like Jurassic Park, just finding some kind of medium between digital and practical? Like, what are your feelings on that?
Well, I mean, I think that visual effects and practical effects suffer the same thing, which is that you have zealots on both sides of the fence. You have people who feel like CG is the answer for every single thing. You have people who feel like practical makeup effects are the solution to every single thing, because they're traditionalists in their own right. They are like, they either think you should build it with your hands, or they think you're an idiot for doing that. You should build it on the computer. I personally see myself as an illusionist, and to limit any of my tools as an illusionist to not create the illusion would be silly and self-defeating. So to not use the computer in post as part of the illusion technique would be silly. Even if I'm going to create a practical puppet that I can perform on set, just being able to remove the rods is amazing. To be able to puppeteer it in front of a green screen instead of live on set is amazing. So compositing those images is not just always about, laying the sticker on top of the back plate. Like a visual effects artist in that circumstance is required for the illusion to work. It doesn't matter how great the monster was on set if you can see the cameraman in the eye, and the only way you're getting rid of the cameraman in that eye is with a computer. And to say, no, we only want practical effects, we don't want any visual effects, would be shooting yourself in the foot. Because, in Syst, we have a puppet that is a marionette puppet. It doesn't get a lot more traditional than a marionette puppet. But in order for the marionette puppet to work, we had to utilize a green tube as a way to deliver the strings to the puppet in a way that we knew the visual effects was able to erase after the fact. So, if you have... There are some moments where you are up against the reality of the situation. If you create a makeup effect on somebody's face where you need to be able to see the inside of their brain, you are not going to create that on a live human being. You can only create that with a severed head. Well, if the scene needs it to be a live human being and not a severed head, then how do you do that? And you pretty much have to create a green space on that person's head inside of a practical makeup effect with flappy edges so that a CG artist then can take that green and now they do their own sculpture and they dig into it even deeper. And what you have is, and this is true for filmmaking, this is why traditionalists within special effects don't make any sense to me, because the nature of filmmaking is that it's a collaborative artwork. The nature of illusions is that it's a collaborative artwork. Even if you had all practical effects on set, to not include the DP as part of that illusion is fallacy. The DP is essential for you to pull off the gag. If they expose it wrong, or if they use the wrong lens, they shoot it from the wrong angle, your practical effect sucks. Same is true with your visual effect. So it's like everybody has to do the dance, and to say that that visual effects and practical effects can't dance together is not helping anybody.
Antonio, how do you come down on that?
I mean, I kind of feel in the same vein, if you have all these tools and using those tools will get you the best effect possible, it would be arrogant of you to not use those tools just because you don't want to. I feel like that's shortchanging yourself as an artist. You're shortchanging the entire production at that point as well. And I do believe it does need to ride that little sweet spot. Use both. If that's the need, you should do it. But if you can pull something off in a practical sense, by all means, do that as well. You're going to get a reaction from people being able to look at that monster in front of them rather than looking at a dot in the wall. you're always going to get a better effect, even from an actor's standpoint.
And just wanted to talk a little bit about Cyst. Who reached out to you guys? Was it Travis? Was it Andy? Was it Tyler directly? And how did they bring this to you guys? Like, what do they say they needed here?
Let me see. Who came to you?
Travis. That was Travis who came to us initially. Travis Ayers came to us, and he has Pittsburgh roots.
Yes.
And it's so funny because I always picture us as in this little vacuum. We're in this building in Beachview, and we show up every day. We're kind of making monsters, and I've got a website and whatever, and Google tells me I get so many hits every once in a while and whatever like that. But you don't realize sometimes the reach that you have until somebody like Travis contacts you and says, "Hey, I'm a fan of your work already. Like, I don't even have to pitch myself. I'm a fan of your work. We have this movie. We would really love you to do the monster for us. Are you willing to do it?" We never get that kind of call. The call is usually, "Hey, we have a monster movie. Do you want to throw your hat in the ring?" And we don't have any money. And and the monster's 70 feet tall. So in this case, it was like we have a movie that's packed full of really cool special effects. None of them is so off of the wall that it's going to cost a fortune. We have enough money to actually spend on our monster. We already know that we want to use you, so you don't even have to pitch yourself to us. So why don't we just get right into the creative process of making this movie? And it was beautiful because it was never a question of like haggling back and forth about the money and haggling back and forth about the schedule and all that kind of crap. It was like we just the plan, and this doesn't happen a lot. The plan all just kind of like all the pieces just sort of folded together like a piece of origami in a way where it's like you weren't 100% sure what that final picture was going to be, but every fold seems to have counted. I don't feel like there were really any extra folds that anybody had to make.
Now, when it comes to Cyst, obviously, the performances were good, and I like the script and everything, but I think that what people are going to really remember is the monster. And I just remember the first day on set, just walking by and just seeing like, holy shit, look at all that stuff in there, look at all those layers. Can you guys talk to kind of making, the Cyst monster? And because there are, without giving too much away on the film that's in post-production right now, like there are literal layers to this creature. So what was it like, creating that?
Well, it started with a creative discussion between, I believe, Steve and a illustrator of ours named Chris Fern, where they really ironed out like what the design of the multiple different types of, I guess, stages, as it were, that the monster was. And then they would send those designs to Tyler, the director, and Travis, and they would either okay it or veto it or, make some tweaks here and there, whatever. And then it would, once the design was finalized, it would come to me. And then I would start roughing out like the sculpture of the thing, like the, without giving away too much, stage one was much smaller, as you would think. So that was it was made out of clay and whatnot. But then as it got bigger, we used other materials like foam and foam latex and just kind of sculpted it with those mediums to bring this thing to life.
Gotcha. And what was it like having to operate that for you guys, bringing it, on, because the set was obviously tight hallways and small rooms, and the monster gets fairly large. What was it like having to wear the costume or to operate the costume and to do all that?
Challenging, to say the least. It was fun. It was really cool because there's, the tight spaces and lots of people to make all the illusions happen, at the same time. There's lots of like slime and stuff involved. So you have, I'm inside the suit working the thing, pushing my way, inching my way down the hallway and whatnot, while Antonio's out there like throwing slime and like making sure that the monster looks the way that it needs to look. And, it's definitely, like Steve was saying earlier, a collaborative process. And then being able to talk to Tyler and the DP about, lighting and which direction we need to go. And, I got a note at one point, can you get lower? Can you get lower? And it's like, no, there's only so low I can go with this thing, because you have to work within the limitations of the suit as well. So challenging, but a lot of fun.
And where is that suit now?
That suit currently resides in my house. It greets you when you walk in the front door, and it's lit up really nicely and creepy, and yeah, it's really cool to get like a flood of memories right when I walk into my house every single day.
So where can people go if they if they want to hire you guys, or to kind of just get an idea of your services, or pitch an idea, anything like that? Do they go straight to the website? Where do they head for that?
I would say go to the website. The website has all of our contact information, a slew of past projects that we've done to give you an idea as to things that we can do for you. And social media, we're on social medias as well. Do you have any input on that? Like
on which part?
Where to go to, if people are looking to hire us, just the website, right?
Yeah, definitely the website, TolanFX.com. Social media is good. Instagram, we have a pretty strong Instagram presence. But pretty much you're going to learn everything you need to learn from us from the website. There's TolanFX.com, and then there's SquibFX.com if you're interested in learning more about our squibs.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
and the news. There's about to be a Post-Gazette article coming out on our work on I'm Not Okay With This.
Very cool.
Which is going to be cool.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You guys are clearly busy as hell, so I appreciate you taking this time to just sit around and tell me everything about it. So yeah, it's Tolan FX. They're in Beachview. Check out the website. I can't stress enough. That's where I did majority of my research before I came in today. Really great stuff. It tells you everything that you need to know. That's on there, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. So if you have any kind of project, whether you're a company or film or anything like that, look into these guys. They're grade A. So I'm hopefully be working with them myself in the future. So
yeah, thanks so much for coming down here and actually thinking that art and nerd stuff is cool.
This is right in my wheelhouse. So absolutely.
Thank you again to Tolan Effects for taking the time to talk to us. It was really great hearing about their history and their approach to creating monsters and creating props and creating special effects makeup for independent film as well as the big Hollywood blockbuster films. Definitely check them out at TolanFX.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw away, or you want to contact us, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, and catch a new episode next time.
Epicast.